Rated Gen Z, where real talks get real. Each episode dives deep into the minds of 18 to 24-year-olds, exploring their dreams, struggles, and perspectives that most people never hear. We're diving into the chaos that defines a generation everyone talks about, but nobody actually listens to. This isn't just a podcast. This is a generation speaking. Welcome to Rated Gen Z, Abigail.
Good. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. I don't even know where you're videoing from, Skyping from, dialing in from. I got it.
Yeah, I'm in Oregon, which is really sweet. Love the Pacific Northwest.
I have never been to Oregon.
Oh, it's always raining. If you love the rain, this is the place to be.
Okay, we'll see. I don't love the rain, so maybe that's why I've never
Yeah.
visited. Is that the only place that you've lived?
Yep, just
Uh,
born and raised in Oregon,
okay.
45 minutes away from Portland. So kind of a small little town out in the ways.
Okay. Do you have any desire to move out of the state and visit other areas, or are you just kind of good set in Oregon?
Honestly, I'm good and set here. I love Oregon. Just so many things you could do. You know, there's forests, beaches, and dunes and stuff. So it's got a little bit of everything.
I feel like with what you do, because obviously I was looking at your background and your resume, and it's very impressive, I might say. And
Thank you.
I love kind of like the contrast. It seems like you're like in an area where it's a little bit more remote, you've got nature, like you have a good balance, because I feel like with what you do with social media, video editing, graphic design, those are always very technical now, and you're on your computer. And so I feel like you get this great balance. Am I correct with that?
Yeah, totally. I think about that a lot too, because I think when a lot of people want to get into like the industry and working in like editing, there's like these main hub spots like, like California or New
Yeah.
York. But what's really nice about like it being on remote is like I get to stay in Oregon, and there is some opportunities out here, especially in Portland. There are a couple of film studios and animation studios. But it is really nice. I really am thankful for this like work-life balance where I can stay in the state that I love and get to do what I love.
Yeah, I feel like it's really important with what you're doing to have that kind of mental, I guess, break, if you will. Like you could just kind of step away from your computer and go outside and be one with nature. And I feel like that also is probably really good inspiration for you too, and like with your creativity as well.
Yes, totally. I'm always like, whenever I think about like making a project or whatever, I can always like imagine like a place for it because Oregon is just so diverse with its type of environments. And it really just is inspiring, just all the nature-esque and stuff around it. It's really sweet.
Yeah, I would, now that we're like talking about it, I'm like, I do need to go visit Oregon. Even
Yeah.
if it's raining, it's not a big deal. I visited Seattle and it was raining and it was still an
Yeah.
enjoyable trip. So how did you get into what you're doing?
Yeah, when I got into like editing and things like that, ever since I was a little kid, I would spend like just hours on like YouTube watching YouTubers, but also just a bunch of short films. And that kind of just always stuck with me. That was like one of the things that I grew up with that I just wanted to kind of be a part of. And so I went to community college. I went to Portland Community College and went through their multimedia program, which I absolutely loved. It was during the pandemic. I was in
Okay.
school from 2021 to 2023 there, so all of it was remote, which was really interesting because when you want to get into like the film world, it's a lot of collaborative work.
Yeah.
So now just being remote, it's kind of just what I've known. It's really interesting, like when there's talks about meeting in person, it's like, oh yeah, you can do that. It's not just over Zoom. How
Yeah.
fun. But yeah, that's kind of where the editing passion started when I was young, and then kind of just now I really was fortunate with my job. I work in like entertainment, so I get to work in a lot of like reality TV and
Yeah, I
entertainment
saw
stuff.
that. I went to your
Yeah.
website and I got to see all of your work and I was like, wow, she actually does like some really, really neat stuff.
I know. I'm honest, I'm so grateful just for it because like it is just such a privilege to work from home and to work in the entertainment industry. So I love it. I love doing the interviews. Also, just being a video production kind of nerd, you get to learn a
Uh-huh.
little bit of the behind the scenes, especially with like the reality TV interviews I do. There was like a couple people, the interviews I did, where some people were like contestants on Survivor, and my family was like huge Survivor fans when it first came out. And
I
so
think
getting
everyone
to,
was.
yes, oh my gosh, what a such a pivotal show for
Yeah.
TV. But it's so interesting to learn like the behind the scenes of like how it's produced and how much they have to like how much they can take with them, surviving on an island. But it's so interesting to hear the behind the scenes of it.
I love that you appreciate the behind the scenes because I feel like with social media, we're finding more and more that behind the scenes is what people want to see. That yes, you have your curated videos and your curated social media posts, but at the end of the day, it's like I want to see the raw stuff and the mistakes and the mishaps and the bloopers and just kind of everything that a lot of people don't want you to see.
Mhm.
That's what I want to see.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's really cool that you have an opportunity to do that. I mean, is there like, do you have like a pinnacle of like what it would be like for you with your career? Like, oh, if I was able to do this with this particular company, then this would be like, I've hit the mark.
Yeah, so in Oregon, in Hillsboro, there's an animation studio called Leica, and they make stop motion films. I think their most popular one is Coraline, and they've
Okay.
done Missing Link and Paranorman, which is another really great movie.
Yes.
Honestly, I don't do a lot with animation, but if I could somehow just like sneak my way in there as like something, that would be like my like, oh my gosh, I've made it moment. That would be the
Yeah.
coolest thing ever.
Well, you never know. I feel like you are someone that, like, yeah, you knew what you wanted to do when you were little. You're taking all like the steps to get to that place where I feel like you'll definitely have that opportunity. I mean, it's interesting how a lot of people that get into social media or do what you're doing, it's like they kind of stumble in it because they realize like they're just doing their social media themselves and they're like, oh, I'm really good at this and I kind of want to pursue it. But I love that you like knew from the beginning. So you're like honing in on your skills.
Yeah, I feel honestly really fortunate because like a lot of people I ask, it's just a curious question, like, what did you want to be when you were a kid? And it's always
Yeah.
like a different answer. And it's just kind of like if I were to go back in time, I could tell my childhood self, it's like, oh, it's like, you're not going to believe this, but what's going on in your noggin is kind of your future, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Because, yeah, like I feel, I mean, I don't know how you see this, but do you sense like maybe it's kind of saturated and there's a lot, and so you have to stand out in some way? And so the fact that maybe you are kind of more skilled in that field, that it gives you that advantage, or do you even think about it that way?
I guess I've never really thought about it that way.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I know that for me at my age and doing social media and branding, like I'm going up against, you like people your age. And so then I tend to think like, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? Like, that whole imposter syndrome. And so that's why I was wondering, like, for you, like if you kind of deal with that or if you're pretty confident in what you're doing.
I will say I do get a little bit of imposter syndrome. Definitely when I've like been working on like the interviews and stuff like that, because I work with like other editors and stuff, and
Okay.
it is just kind of like surreal. I just have to take a step back and be like, it's not really me doing that kind of a thing. Like
Right.
it's like kind of like an out of body experience where it doesn't really seem real, and it's like I don't know if I'm just like hallucinating or if it's just if this is real life kind of.
Yeah. No, I mean that's the thing is like because we get to see what everybody else is doing and what they've accomplished and where they are on their path and their journey, like it's so hard not to compare and think of like, yeah, do I really belong here? So that's why I'm always curious with your generation because I didn't have that growing up. I didn't know what my neighbor was doing unless they were right in front of my face or like
Yeah.
telling me on the phone, Here we have access to all of it. So I'm always wondering like if that really like paralyzes, stifles you guys in a way that, like mentally it just messes with your head.
Yeah, totally. I do
Yeah.
kind of get that way sometimes because when sometimes people just make like this amazing like creative stuff, it's like, oh my gosh, and then it's always like how you were saying that you compare like
Yeah.
yourself to others, especially when it's like people that are like younger than you, and it's like, oh my goodness, like that's amazing, and I wish I was you. So I kind of feel that way.
Yeah, and I mean, really, like your generation, obviously you're younger than I am, but I mean, I can only imagine even just the next generation under you, the Gen Alphas, like they're going to be advanced in a way that like you're going to feel antiquated at some
Yes.
point, like what you've done. That's what's like kind of crazy is that we're looking at you like, oh my gosh, you guys are just so, your finger on the pulse with technology and everything. And then this next generation, who knows, like how crazy that's going to be. I mean, like, how do you deal like with AI, for instance? Like, is that something that you guys are starting to kind of see it infiltrate in what you're doing?
Yeah, when I kind of got into like video editing, so like I said, kind of like or like professionally back in like 2021 when I started, which is kind of when AI was starting to like build itself up and seeing that transition in school too, where they're like put on the assignments, they're like, oh, if you use AI, like, you won't get credit obviously because AI, you're not doing it, you're having
Yeah,
AI do it. It was kind of scary there at some point, even doing like I do like voiceover and stuff like that for fun and stuff on the side. And with all the advancements of AI voiceover, it really was like intimidating and kind of scary because I was like, oh gosh, like that's the only thing I wanted to do with
yeah,
my life. And it's kind of like it could be replaced by just AI or kind of like all this computer stuff, which is kind of freaky. But kind of being in the industry and doing and getting some like voiceover roles, it did make me feel a little bit better because there's always people that are creating and
mm,
who just want to have like these human experiences and collaborations with their projects. So it is scary with AI kind of becoming more prevalent, but there's still this hope that there's going to be these human-made projects in this artistic way that humans do that AI can't replicate. And so it's definitely kind of eased a little bit of my fears that
oh,
it
good.
might not take over, which is cool.
Yeah, I didn't even think about it with the voiceovers. I mean, you're right. Like that's something that they could easily use. And then even videos, we've seen, the way that AI videos now have like, gosh, just it's crazy. Sometimes I'm like, can't tell if this is AI or not. Yeah, but you're right when you say that there are going to be people that still want to deal with humans. Like I still choose, I would still choose to deal with someone in person, human being. I mean, there are people that might not, and that's okay, but I feel like you're always going to have people that still want to be able to interact and work with a human.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, just the whole idea and the concept still kind of freaks me out, but I mean, we're getting closer and closer to like movies that I used to see growing up that was like, yeah, right, this is never going to happen. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, this is actually like going to be in my lifetime. So,
Yeah.
yeah. How do what do you see like changing besides AI? Are there any like trends or anything that you're starting to see when it comes to video or anything?
I guess some things I've noticed, I guess, with kind of like AI is there's a lot more like platforms that are available to people to like take like long form content and make it shorter. So it all
Mm,
kind of has like it's cool, I will say, but it's also like kind of similar where like I feel like with brands and stuff like that, it's kind of hard to distinguish between like what like font or like colors belongs to a specific person. So it all kind of feels like the same. Like with
okay.
like captions and things like that, there's kind of like the trend where it's like all similar. And I understand why they do it because it does work. Like I because we are seeing that content over and over again in the sense of like it is trending, it's what kind of gets people's attention, but it's just kind of like scary.
Yeah. I know it's a tough one because once again, saturated and you want to stand out, but at the same
Mhm.
time, the whole branding, you want it to be consistent and you want it to be, someone you want people to be like, oh, that's so, Abigail, that's so Raquel.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like I'm someone that likes to change things up. but then I struggle with that because I'm like, oh gosh, then people are going to be confused about my brand and what I stand for.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's a lot to think about for so many
Yes.
people. I mean, so how do you like decompress? Do you ever?
I honestly don't think so. I
No.
mean, yeah, I mean, just being like on social media and stuff like that all the time and kind of just constantly consuming that content and definitely not in a healthy way. Just
Yeah.
because I feel like also just with my job being remote and just having to like research trends and stuff like that to
Yeah.
incorporate into our own editing, it's just like you can never escape it. Low key.
Yeah, but I will tell you that I've had guests on my podcast that don't have social media. I had a guest who they have Facebook only because like family, but they rarely post on it. And then I have a guest that I haven't posted yet. She's only on LinkedIn. She doesn't have Instagram or Facebook or TikTok or anything. And they're both in their early 20s. So, I mean, there are still Gen Zers out there that are not, falling into, I guess, I don't want to say it's a trap, but
Yeah.
I feel like for them, they feel like it is. So that's why they don't do it.
Mhm.
And it's interesting because you think, oh my gosh, how are these people like surviving or how are
Yeah.
these like still part of like society? But clearly it can work.
Mhm.
So I'm always like once again curious how your generation is able to at least like understand that mentally it can be exhausting
Mhm.
and detrimental. So I mean I would think that there has to be something that you do in order to like maintain your sanity in that right.
Yeah. Um, I mean, yeah, I guess like there's always like me personally, I do like going like with Oregon. It's really nature and pretty, obviously, even when it's raining. Like I do like to go and like we live around a lake, so we'll walk around the lake and things like that and
Okay.
decompress. But that is really interesting. I always love to hear that a lot of people aren't necessarily on social media. And
Yeah.
I've tried to like, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna get rid of my Instagram, I'm gonna get rid of my TikTok, and then I'm like, well, then how am I going to stay up to date with all the trends in editing? And two,
Yeah.
so it's kind of like a little bit difficult in like a video editor's position. And I was like, dang, because I do want to delete some social media, but at the same time, it's like
I
nice to have.
know. Well, that's the thing is like I ended up with social media marketing and branding too when I was in corporate. And so for me it was like my thing was that, well, it's my job. I kind of have to be hanging out on social media. But it's like it's hard because once I get off of it, like I've gone on vacation before and just like not been on it. And then once I'm off it, I'm like, "Ah, I don't want to get back on it." That's
Yeah.
the other thing too, is like you kind of get a taste of what it's like not to have to worry about what is going on in the world. And
Yeah.
it does feel really nice. So I feel like the balance part of it is really difficult for everyone and anyone.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter like what age you are, where you are. That is something that I have found that those people that are on it, it's a struggle to figure out how to maintain that balance.
Yeah.
It's a real thing. The fact that you do that all day long. I'm just like thinking
It's
about
bad.
that. Yeah, no, but I mean it seems like you're someone that is pretty grounded and at least like I would hope that when you are out there like on the lake that you're pretty present,
Yeah.
and like understand how important that is to be in the moment, because
Mhm.
I mean, how do you kind of like see the world in a sense like do you allow what you consume on social media to kind of also I guess dictate or influence like how you see things?
Sometimes it does. I don't know if you ever heard of the t term of doom scrolling.
Yes.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yes.
Sometimes you kind of just get stuck, and then I do see some like negative things just like on like my timeline, and it just kind of like picks up that I'm watching it, and then I kind of find myself like getting upset and just kind of getting sad over it, and it's like I just need to detox from it. So
Yeah.
it can be like really consuming, which is really scary.
Yeah, and the only reason why I like asked that now is because like I'm getting kind of caught up in that, right? Because like everything going on, like I don't watch the news, so I basically get my information via social media. But then yeah, like the algorithms, it's amazing like what they start putting out in front of you. And it really affects you and your mood and just how you
Mhm.
feel. And it's a lot for your generation. And so it's like trying to figure out like how we can do better because I don't, our bodies and our minds are not meant to see that or consume that much information 24/7. Do you have any siblings?
I do. Yeah, I have a twin sister and I have an older sister.
You have a Is she identical?
Yes. Yes, we technically, I mean, to me, we don't really look alike, but we
Okay.
are identical twins.
Oh my God. My mom's an identical twin.
Oh, that is so cool.
Yeah. Are you close with her?
Yes, yeah. Her and
Okay.
we're like this. Even my older sister, she's only like 13 months older than us, so we're all like really close in
Oh,
age.
wow.
So yeah, my poor parents.
That is, yeah, that's a lot. And do they live in Oregon too?
Yep, yeah, we live really in close proximity to each other. We usually get like coffee every morning together. It's great.
I think that's fantastic. I want to like dive in more into like, just your relationship with your siblings because, that's another thing too is family, is so
Yes.
important. Is your twin sister, is she kind of like in the same industry or is she totally opposite? Because my mom and her twin sister are like opposites.
She's not like in the industry, but she is a very creative person. I take a lot of inspiration from her. She's obviously living in Oregon. She is trying to get into like forestry and stuff, and she actually works at the lake
Okay.
seasonally, and so different careers, but we are very both like creative.
And then how about your older sister?
My older sister, she is insanely smart. She's a veterinary technician. And so she works with animals, but she's like every single time I talk about my older sister, I'm always like, she is just incredibly smart. She can memorize so many things and she's really good with math, which I'm so jealous of. I'm terrible at math.
I'm terrible at math too. Most
But
of
yeah,
us creatives are.
yes. Yeah, that's why I am a video editor and not
Yeah.
anything scientific or anything like that. Because holy moly, that's impressive. But yeah,
Yeah.
she's just incredible. Both my sisters are just incredible people.
Oh my gosh, your parents must be so proud of all three of
Yes.
you. Oh my God, especially that you guys have such a great relationship. Yeah, I have two younger siblings. I was actually just in San Francisco for 4 days, and I was staying with my brother, so I got to spend time with him. So I always like to hear when you have when everybody's close to their siblings because I think it is so important
Yeah,
for sure. Those relationships and that you guys
totally.
like support one another. It sounds like you have such an awesome support system with them.
Yes, they are
Yeah.
incredible. I best friends for life, you know.
I feel like that's gonna help you,
Yes.
when it comes to like just the like decompressing and just the mental, stuff. I feel like you've got two women right there that you can turn to
Mhm.
and that says a lot and that'll carry you through
Yeah.
a lot because you're still young. There's still so much life ahead of you that, and a lot of things that will happen, and experiences, but to have your two sisters by your side, you're
Yes.
very blessed.
I am. I'm really am so grateful for them. They are just everything.
I love it. So let me ask you this too, just now that I know you have two siblings and you guys are all around the same age. Like, what is it that you hope or would want people to know that maybe, they're not aware of?
I guess with like our generation and just knowing like obviously my sisters and stuff very personally, I would hope. Um, we've all been through quite a lot and we've been through different like changes, but no matter what, we always have just some sort of like hope behind us that we can always achieve and do things that we've always dreamed of, and it's not something that's ever going to hold us back. Like I feel like it's kind of like in the jobs where like, they look for like entry level people, but then on like the application, they're actually looking for people with like 2 to 3 years of experience.
Yeah.
It's always just good to acknowledge people for who they are and kind of like for their skills, even if they don't have like a set background, I suppose, that just our generation is just very optimistic and hopeful and really dedicated people, I would say.
That is something that I have seen with all in the conversations I've had. I love that because you're not allowing, all this stuff that you consume or read or you hear affect your hope.
Yeah, yeah. I can definitely see both sides of that where like some people would think is like even some days I'm kind of like, dang, like should I like continue like do I want to keep doing video editing and things
Yeah.
like that? Do I want to keep pursuing those things? But in the end it's just like I really am hopeful, I guess. That is the only I guess that's like the only word I can use to
Yeah.
describe it, just hoping that, there's more than just kind of the doom and gloom.
Yeah. No, I mean that's what we need, right? Because if everybody kind of had that mentality and that attitude, it's like then what's the purpose of living life? I mean, if you
Yeah.
think about it, like we're here, so might as well make the best of it and might as well try to have a positive outlook. I mean,
Mhm.
obviously, shit happens and there's moments where you're like, oh my gosh, but in the grand scheme of things, it's like, well, if you are here, like try to make the best of it. And um, I just love that so many of you are doing that. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
might as well try to make a positive impact and do good. I mean, it's amazing how many of you like have like nonprofits and are writing books or something that was an obstacle for them or something, or like a certain diagnosis or if you will, they're like utilizing that to like give back and to better serve.
Yeah.
And I think that's fantastic. And I know it gives us like Gen Xers and baby boomers hope too, right? Like your hope is giving us hope.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah, no, seriously. Like I tell people all the time that every time I have a conversation, that I end up feeling so much better about our world and so much better about humanity. Like it's never like, oh my gosh, we are screwed or
Yeah.
oh my goodness, like what's going to happen? No, it's the opposite. And I think that's why I want to do this documentary film to have more of your voices and stories shared so people realize like, yeah, no, like let's not give up on this generation because they have so much freaking hope.
Yeah.
you know, let's continue to give them that hope. It's, who are we to take it away from you? Is there anything else that you want to share before we kind of close out? Anything that you would want us to know about you?
Yeah, when you kind of mentioned about how like when you're talking to like younger generations and how they
Yeah,
have like this kind of hope and like working forward or moving forward types of a thing. Something else that I do that is like I think one of my favorite things that I am a part of is I work with a nonprofit organization, Digital for Good, X hashtag I can help.
yes,
You may have had a couple of other people
I
from that
have.
organization. But we have this thing called Students for Good, and it's where these students attend our webinar and they talk about like their nonprofits and they talk about all these projects that they do, and it really is like so inspiring. And just having those conversations with people, like I feel the exact same way that it's like, wow, like I love seeing, like I know I talked about earlier how it's like when you see like younger people kind of like achieving and doing more, it's like, oh man, I wish I could do that. But it's also just so rewarding and impactful to see just the younger generation and things just going for achieving better, like creating these nonprofits. And, I've seen so many of like people doing like mental health nonprofits, balancing the digital world and things like that, and just aiming to do better. And I just love the work that they do. And then being able to work with that organization, it's so impactful. And I'm so grateful to be working with them. But it's really just so refreshing and inspiring. And everybody in that organization and that we've talked to just inspires myself and then hopefully our viewers every single day.
Yeah, it's amazing because somehow I don't know how I met one person from Digital for Good, and then it just kind of expanded out where I have had I think 5 conversations with different students that have been part of it and just sharing their nonprofits. And yeah, it's an incredible organization. So for anybody, like, would you be able to kind of give a little bit of a description as what Digital for Good does? Because, yeah, I feel like if people knew, they'd be more inclined to want to even hear more about it.
Yeah, totally. So for Digital for Good, it's been around for a little over 10 years now, and its mission is basically to create kind of digital first responders and combating like cyberbullying and balance online and what to do in type of situations where like we talk about things of like sextortion, cyberbullying, being like on the back end of scams and how it can like negatively affect people. Our organization helps educate people on how to spot these dangers and how to report them and what are those next steps, which is really, really needed now, especially kind of like with AI. That's another thing that we talk about is like
Hmm.
what's real and what's not, spotting misinformation, things like that. And that's what the organization does is to kind of create those digital first responders.
Yeah, because I know at some point you were looking for an opportunity, but it seems like you just found one, right? Like just recently?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, because I remember just seeing on LinkedIn
Mhm.
that you were open to an opportunity. And so I'm glad to see that someone picked you up because
Yeah.
you definitely are incredibly talented. Like I said, I was looking at your website and looking at all your work and I was like, she's good.
Thank you.
Yeah. Um, all right, Abigail. Well, I appreciate you coming on and sharing a little bit about yourself. And if anybody wants to reach out to you, they can, right? Like you're on LinkedIn, you're on
Yes.
Instagram. And aren't
Yep.
you going to have a podcast soon? Or you're going to do one or a YouTube channel, or I think, didn't you say
Uh,
something?
Yeah, I have a YouTube channel that I'm just going to be like posting all of like
Okay.
these random, kind of like random projects that don't really fit on like my portfolio. They're not like associated with anything. They're just kind of fun little tidbits I'll put together.
Oh, okay. Great. Well, yeah, people will have to follow that too. I love it. Well, thanks again.
Yeah, thanks so much. This was great. I love talking with you. This was looking forward to seeing it.
Yes, me too.
If you enjoyed this episode and you're between the ages of 18 and 24 and would like to be a featured guest, go to rock.vision. Until next